Because him and Diddy was giving that deal, we got to keep these East Coast rappers down. Because down South rappers, Cash Money, No Limit, Ludacris and them, they was taking little money and bringing back more money and making more money.
The streets of Harlem have seen their share of legends, but what unfolded just days ago felt like something torn from the bloodstained pages of the 90s East Coast-West Coast rivalry. Former Diddy bodyguard Gene Deal, a man who had already shattered years of silence with claims that Sean Diddy Combs bankrolled the plot against Shakur, found himself cornered in broad daylight. Witnesses say the air turned electric. Engines revved, footsteps closed in, and voices rose above the street noise with one chilling rally cry: "Bad boy forever." In that moment, the message was as clear as it was dangerous. This wasn't a random scuffle. It was theater, a reminder, a warning that the past isn't done with him yet.
I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their...
The timing couldn't have been sharper. Deal had only just gone public with his accusations, throwing Diddy's name back into the firestorm of the Las Vegas shooting that ended Shakur's life in September 1996. And now here he was, standing in the very neighborhood that once fed the pulse of Bad Boy Records, staring down an ambush that felt equal parts personal and symbolic. Harlem, the cradle of Diddy's empire, had become the stage for an act of intimidation that rippled far beyond the block. Was it a coincidence? Not with the words "bad boy forever" echoing against brick walls like an old battle chant from hip-hop's most dangerous era. We know Gene Deal isn't just another talking head chasing clout. He was inside the circle, the kind of inside where phone calls aren't logged and deals are sealed with looks instead of signatures. He's painted himself as a whistleblower, and whether the public believes every syllable of his story or not, he's positioned as a man who broke ranks with a mogul whose influence once felt untouchable. The way Deal tells it, speaking out about what happened in Vegas in '96, isn't just digging up history, it's prying open a door someone very powerful once bolted shut. And if the Harlem attack was meant to slam that door back in his face, it also sent another message that the network loyal to Diddy, real or imagined, still knows how to flex.
And then what's the stuff that's happening with Wendy Williams? Do you think this is all connection to?
Of course!
While Harlem was still buzzing with the aftershock, a voice from behind prison walls entered the fray. Suge Knight, the man who sat in the driver's seat the night Shakur was gunned down, now serving decades in a California cell, broke his silence with promises that dripped like gasoline onto open flames. He says he's ready to tell what really happened in Las Vegas. The suggestion alone has rattled both fans and old players in the game. Industry insiders whisper that Suge isn't just bluffing, that he might be sitting on something concrete, a recording, a meeting transcript, maybe even a witness statement, tied directly to the night the hit was arranged. And if there's one man in this saga who has nothing to lose, it's the former death row boss. The layers of this are heavy. Suge Knight's voice still carries weight in the hip-hop underworld, and his hints are careful but calculated. To some, it sounds like he's lining up to take everyone down with him, Diddy included, before the curtains close. The '96 Vegas drive-by wasn't just a crime, it was a fracture point in a culture war that swallowed careers and lives alike. With Suge backing Gene Deal, the narrative shifts. It's no longer just one former employee pointing a finger. It's the man who rode shotgun, with Shakur lending credibility to the claim that Diddy played a role in lighting the fuse.
Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that
Shout out to Wendy Williams.
And just when it seemed like the drama couldn't knot itself any tighter, the current trial against Diddy in New York threw a fresh curveball. Federal prosecutors revealed in court that Victim 3, one of the 3 key witnesses set to testify in his high-stakes human trafficking case, has vanished. Not just ducked the press, she's completely off the grid. She doesn't live in New York, her attorney can't be reached, and there's a growing doubt she'll ever take the stand. On paper, it's a procedural problem for the prosecution. In the streets, it smells like something else entirely. The absence of this witness is more than just a gap in testimony. Victim 3 was expected to spill very personal and explosive details about Diddy's alleged private gatherings, the kind that prosecutors say doubled as tools of control and that his defense insists were between consenting adults. Her story, they argued, would have helped establish a long-term pattern of exploitation, bolstering the accounts of other women, including R&B singer Cassie Ventura, but without her, a chunk of that narrative threatens to crumble. And yet, the whispers in certain industry corners aren't about her nerves or the inconvenience of travel. They're about the reach of a man whose power, even while behind bars, might still extend into the shadows.
I can't wait. I can't wait for everybody to find out what's really been going on in the background.
We've heard variations of this before, the suggestion that Diddy doesn't just fight his battles in court, that influence can be exercised in ways no legal team will ever acknowledge. Some recall past accusations of witness tampering lodged in earlier filings, pointing to alleged three-way calls from jail and other indirect pressure tactics. Add to that the disappearance of victim 3, and suddenly, the talk isn't just about missing testimony, it's about whether we're watching a modern echo of the same machinery that decades ago could make enemies vanish from both the charts and the streets. Now, connect that to the current storm over the Shakur case, where Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, awaiting trial for his admitted role in the Vegas shooting, has accused Diddy of offering millions to have Shakur and Suge taken out. Federal filings say Keefe named Diddy 47 times in one police interview alone. And here we are, with Suge in prison, hinting at proof, Gene Deal under street attack, and a crucial witness in Diddy's unrelated trial slipping into the wind. It's a convergence that feels less like coincidence and more like a multi-decade game finally tipping toward checkmate.
They once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
Those who've followed Diddy's arc, from chart-topping producer to embattled defendant, know this pattern. Bursts of scandal, followed by periods of calm, lawsuits that vanish into settlements, rumors that never quite harden into charges. Yet today, the stakes are different. The federal indictment has him facing racketeering, trafficking, and transportation charges that could lock him away for life. And in a bizarre twist of symmetry, some of those accusations have started to overlap with the very era when Shakur's last night alive was being plotted in hotel rooms and backseat whispers. We can't ignore the optics. On one side, prosecutors scrambling to secure witnesses before opening statements. On the other, Suge Knight tapping the glass from behind prison bars, signaling he might finally tell the story that has lived for nearly 30 years in rumor and rap lyrics. Meanwhile, in Harlem, Gene Deal stands as both a target and a torchbearer, refusing to back off the claim that his former boss signed off on the biggest hit in hip-hop history. And as all this unfolds, victim 3 remains a ghost, her voice, and whatever she was prepared to say, hanging like an unfinished sentence over a trial that's already one of the most volatile in recent memory.
Trump pardoning Diddy will create another Epstein for him. It would be a nightmare. And last and certainly not least, the GOP is already struggling with female voters, and they're not all lefties. There are young conservative women who aren't in love with Trump or MAGA. There are. And this will not help. It's very clear. We all saw the videotape of him beating the hell out of Cassandra.
Because in this world, disappearing acts aren't always accidents. Sometimes they're strategy. And if the last week has shown us anything, it's that this isn't just a legal fight or a battle over legacy. It's a war for control of the story itself, fought in courtrooms, prison cells, and, when necessary, right out on the streets. But this isn't just about a Harlem sidewalk or Suge Knight's cryptic promises. The further we follow the threads, the more tangled they become. In the heart of Diddy's ongoing legal war, federal prosecutors have admitted something that should send a chill through anyone who still believes in open justice. They cannot find victim 3. This woman wasn't a peripheral figure. She was lined up to give testimony so raw, so damning, that the court was preparing for its impact. Now she's gone. No one's picking up her calls. Even her lawyer has dropped out of contact, citing vague personal issues. In a trial where the stakes are measured in decades behind bars, that kind of disappearance isn't just inconvenient, it's catastrophic.
I don't know this, but it just seems very suspicious when you go through and you look at in the history of different people that can make you go away if listen, I've worried about some of the things that I talk about on my show.
We're left to wonder, is she keeping her distance out of genuine fear, choosing silence over the storm that would follow? Or has someone, somewhere, made sure her voice will never reach the jury box? Because the case against Diddy doesn't live on one witness alone. But losing her means losing a key piece of a larger pattern prosecutors have been desperate to paint. Her account, we're told, would have tied together years of alleged misconduct, stretching from intimate settings to the heart of his inner circle. Without it, the narrative becomes looser, easier to pick apart. And history has shown us how quickly high-profile trials can turn once the evidence starts to thin. What unsettles us most is how this echoes whispers from earlier in the case. Whispers about behind-the-scenes maneuvers, about calls made from jail that allegedly skirted the rules, about indirect messages finding their way to people the government wanted to protect. If victim 3 is now beyond reach, we have to ask whether we're watching the beginning of a slow-motion collapse, one where the sheer weight of influence bends the process until it breaks. It's a thought that makes the absence feel less like a coincidence and more like a chapter in a much older playbook.
So, Terrence Howard appeared on the PBD podcast with Patrick Bet-David, and the episode, this premiered on April 4th. Definitely making the rounds because in this episode, Terrence Howard describes an interaction with Diddy where he says that he believes that Diddy was trying to have sex with him. Let's take a look.
And then there's the shadow that stretches back to the 90s, where the streets and the studio mixed in dangerous ways. We've known for years about the rumors linking Diddy to Dwayne Keefe D. Davis and the Southside Crips. But new details from Keefe's own mouth have dragged those rumors into sharper focus. In his accounts, Diddy wasn't just a chart-topping executive under fire from Suge Knight's death row empire. He was a man so cornered, so wary of his rival's reach, that he allegedly floated a bounty worth millions for the removal of both Shakur and Suge himself. Keefe claims that in front of a crowd, Diddy said he'd give anything to take Suge off the board. In gangland terms, that's not idle talk, that's an open contract. It's a picture of alliances built not on profit but on survival, where music business deals overlapped with street-level power plays. Keefe describes how the hit wasn't simply a matter of revenge for a diss track. It was a move in a chess game where the pieces were people, and the stakes were dominance over an industry soaked in territorial pride. If his words are true, then the connection between Bad Boy Records and the Crips wasn't a marketing gimmick or a borrowed aesthetic. It was an operational link, one with consequences that spilled blood and altered the course of hip-hop forever.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking.
What's more, the way Keefe tells it, payment for the Vegas shooting didn't even flow as promised. A middleman, Eric Zip Martin, allegedly kept the bounty instead of handing it over. That twist adds another layer to the narrative. Even in the midst of orchestrating the most infamous drive-by in music history, there were betrayals within the betrayal. The story Keefe spins is one where loyalty is fluid, money is never safe, and every handshake carries the possibility of a knife in the back. Now, decades later, those same names are resurfacing in court filings, investigative leaks, and jailhouse statements. And the timing couldn't be more volatile. With Diddy's October sentencing on the racketeering and trafficking charges inching closer, the past isn't just following him, it's overtaking him. The prosecutors building today's case aren't officially charging him for what happened on the Las Vegas Strip, but the subtext is impossible to ignore. In public opinion, the walls of these two sagas are collapsing into one another.
Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, you don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate you.
The danger for Diddy is that this convergence makes it harder to separate the man from the mythology. If the jury hears enough about intimidation, vanishing witnesses, and decades-old alliances with street crews, the narrative stops being about isolated incidents and starts being about a criminal ecosystem with him at the center. And if the court of public opinion fully locks into that image, it may not matter what the verdict says. His empire, built on platinum records, luxury branding, and an image of invincibility, could crumble in the shadow of a story that's been waiting nearly 30 years to be told. There's another layer of intrigue that few dare to touch, one that pushes the entire saga beyond personal grudges or gang rivalries. For years, quiet murmurs in industry backrooms and law enforcement circles have hinted that Diddy's survival through decades of controversy wasn't just luck or legal skill. It may have been the product of a hidden arrangement. The theory claims that as far back as the late 90s, he may have been feeding information to federal agents, trading insider intelligence on rivals and criminal networks in exchange for a level of immunity that no defense lawyer could ever negotiate. If that's true, then the story isn't just about one man's empire. It's about a bargain struck in the shadows that rewrote the rules of accountability.
Well, the things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
Those whispers gained weight when references to sealed FBI files began surfacing in niche investigative forums and among retired officers who once worked high-profile organized crime cases. The suggestion is that Diddy's name appears in reports connected to East Coast, West Coast violence, not as a suspect, but as a confidential source. In that light, his uncanny ability to dodge lasting legal consequences starts to look less like resilience and more like the byproduct of a system willing to overlook certain transgressions to keep a valuable informant in play. The troubling part is what might have been allowed to slide under that arrangement. Incidents that, if fully investigated, could have ended his career decades ago. It also reframes the risk surrounding current witnesses. If someone has enjoyed protection from the highest levels before, there's a precedent for their enemies to simply vanish from the process without clear explanation. The disappearance of victim 3 becomes even more unsettling when viewed through this lens, because it hints at a possible continuum, a way of operating that's been quietly effective for years. And if prosecutors are indeed going up against a defendant who knows exactly how to navigate both the courtroom and the back channels of federal power, then their challenge is far greater than convincing 12 jurors.
The centerpiece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freak-offs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freak-offs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop. It was something she felt.
Ultimately, this alleged link to federal agencies forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. When those tasked with enforcing the law make selective deals, justice becomes negotiable. If the whispers about Diddy's cooperation hold any truth, then the past 3 decades of hip-hop history may have been shaped not only by talent and ambition, but by an invisible pact between a cultural icon and the very system meant to keep him in check. It's a possibility that turns the question of guilt or innocence into something even more complex, a question of how much the public will ever be allowed to know. We're watching an unprecedented collision of eras, the violent politics of mid-90s rap beefs, the glitzy but volatile rise of hip-hop mogul culture, and the relentless grind of federal prosecution in the age of surveillance and social media. The question is whether the truth will break free before the machinery of influence can bury it again. Because if even part of what Gene Deal, Suge Knight, and Keefe have claimed holds water, then the stakes here aren't just about one man's future. They're about rewriting the official history of a whole movement.
PD named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac.
And now we're left on the edge, staring at a clock that's ticking toward October, wondering if the courtroom will finally become the place where these ghosts are named, or if the secrets of '96 will slip back into the dark for good. So, what do you think? Are we about to see the fall of one of hip-hop's most untouchable figures? Or will he once again walk away with the truth buried deep? Drop your thoughts below, and until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and never forget that in this game, the past is never really past.